Yep, those are needle bearings.
Made this trip so many times today, I wonder if I can do it blindfolded.
Welcome back to Between the Sharks, where the dog gets free watermelons every time someone subscribes. That's not true, dog. You get free watermelon whether they subscribe or not. But please consider subscribing. A watermelon? All right.
Gang, it is a balmy 75 degrees in the shop and it's 8 a.m. I feel like I was in a prize fight yesterday and didn't win the prize. Let's see if we can get this thing up in the air. We got a drive shaft that needs some new U-joints to get installed, and then we need to weld in some perches after we confirm pinion angle. I almost lost that word forever. All right, we've double checked everything, triple checked, quadruple checked. Went from yaw to the axle, side to side, pinion, all the stuff. I think it's right. Time to make it so. So pop this U-bolt out. We're gonna weld in these brackets. One step closer. When you're welding above your head, it's a good time to grab your welding jacket. That's what it's for. It's probably always good to have it. Oh guys, this welding jacket feels like a wet rag just from the humidity. I feel like I just got into somebody else's gym clothes.
Ew, what?
All right, we're good and welded in. U-joint time. Gang, things were going so smoothly. I was thinking, why show a guy replacing another U-joint? It's not that big a deal. You knock one out, you knock one in. Yep, those are needle bearings. Been at it an hour already, baby. Think calming thoughts. I do not know what's going wrong. The needle bearings have fallen over while assembling again. I don't know what to do. We may be headed to the Driveshaft shop. It's been, I don't know what time it is. I think we're at 2 hours now trying to get this thing in and failing bad. Gang, let me tell you a little story. It's noon. I started this whole mess process trying to get this U-joint replaced at like 9. I smashed my thumb with a hammer, went to the Driveshaft shop, and I said, hey man, I am about to burn my shop down. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what I did. Just, can you help me out? Dude took the Driveshaft in the back, worked on it for 15 minutes or so, ended up replacing 2 of the caps because I had dropped the needle so many times, installed it, and told me how to properly install the C-clips for this other half, charged me like 15 bucks. I gave him a 20. I said, thank you. Amazon won't do that for you, man. But he also told me that these old Chevy styles are like file to fit for your clips, so he did all that for me. Support local shops if you can. I don't care if the U-joint was more expensive than I could have gotten it on the internet. You know what was priceless? The information I didn't have that I just learned from a guy that actually knows stuff. I guess that's what it is, file to fit. It's you file the cap just a fuzz until that clippy thing goes in there. Well gang, outside of the minor fiasco-et if you will, of the universal joint, which was probably a combination of bad luck and my fault. But after that, the worst part was, you know, the misery of grinding off factory brackets. In theory, by changing just the rear end, we have just increased the top speed of this vehicle by 28%. At 75 miles an hour, we just took our cruising RPMs from 3,000 down to around 2,200, I think, math. We're not quite done yet, not quite ready to hit the road at very high speed. We need to go over the brake system. In fact, we're going to update it to a less deadly version than what's in there. Now, if you watch the channel at all, thanks. And you know that we're all about classic cars that you can drive daily, whether you do or don't, that you can. What that means for me in the Atlanta area as a daily driver is I can expect monumental amounts of traffic, but that traffic is often happening within city limits with speed limits of 70 miles an hour. So not only do you have stop and go, in modern traffic, cars are off to the races and then they slam on their brakes. And now, fellas, what's more important than going fast? Being able to stop going fast. It needs some work. Let me show you. That thing right there on the right, the big rusty feller, that is a single brake master cylinder. One line goes to the front, one line goes to the back, single fluid reservoir. So that one tank of fluid feeds both systems. Well, if you have a failure somewhere in your system, a wheel cylinder blows out, a brake hose, something, it doesn't matter where it happens. All of that fluid is gonna go to the path of least resistance and get pumped right out of the car, and you have a catastrophic brake failure. Now, this lovely 1967 Cadillac behind me has a dual reservoir. That's two. Uno, dos. You have two reservoirs divided in the middle. One feeds the front, one feeds the back. On its most basic level, that theoretically means that if you have a failure in the front, you still have pressure to your rear brakes, and vice versa. You still have a way to stop the car without crashing into something, because that will indeed stop the car. I have suffered two catastrophic brake failures in my time. One was in this truck. Blew out the driver's side front brake hose. I was actually on the highway doing about 70 miles an hour and headed towards a wall of stopped traffic after I crested a hill. Luckily for me, when I hit the brake the first time, that's when it blew, and I knew I had a major problem and had time to react. If I had started to slow down and then let off and then hit it again and it blew the second time, I probably would have been dead inside the back of a box truck that was right in front of me. Not even joking. It was a bad failure, had zero brakes whatsoever. The other was in this car right here. Fortunately, in this car, I wasn't moving. Got in the car, hit the brake pedal right before I started it. Brake pedal went straight to the floor. In this car, it was the master cylinder. Gone. So I rebuilt the master cylinder and went on my way. That was enough years ago that, you know.
All right, Wazowski, what's the plan?
So the plan for this is to mimic this. What we have here is a power boosted 4-drum setup. I understand that a lot of people and the internet and whatever think that you absolutely have to have disc brakes to have any kind of real stopping power. There's no question that disc brakes are a better design for traffic than drum brakes. However, drum brakes properly adjusted, for the most part, depending on, you know, there's nuance here, should work for you just fine. The drum brakes designed for this car stop this car, and it weighs 5,000 pounds. So the trick here is, fellas, we got to engineer a system where we can get a dual master cylinder. I'm gonna try shoving a power booster in, one of the little miniature ones. And here's the magic of it all. We've got to come off the stock pedal assembly because I still have the clutch, and the pedals run through the existing master cylinder. We're gonna have to get inventive. All right, so right here is the stock brake pedal with the stock brake pedal linkage pushing the cylinder, the master cylinder in. What I'm hoping we can do is come off of this, back here, out to here, where we can mount some kind of master cylinder, you know, booster, magically gesture it into life. The issue is that that's going to put our reservoir at a place that is a pain in the butt to fill. I'm willing to deal with that, I think. It would have to be filled from under the car. There's no question about it, because this is under the seat. That ugly hole in the ugly floors is where the master cylinder was filled stock and still is currently. Maybe we can come up with a sort of remote reservoir thing, but I don't know. So let's gather some parts and pieces, because I don't have all of the things that I need. So here's what I got. This half a bracket from the Model T project and this Brand new 7-inch power booster from Summit. That's it. Now I've worked on all the brakes on every vehicle that I own, and I've built a couple complete brake systems for a couple of hot rods. If any of you guys have done the same, then you know there's a lot to be considered. Master cylinder bore size, wheel cylinder bore size, brake line size, residual valves, pressure valves, proportioning valves. And if you do some research, you're really gonna come up with more options and more confusion than you thought. That's exactly where I am. Gang, there were instructions for something in the top of the box and I just turned them into like paper snowflakes. Huh, right here. I don't even know what these are for, but it's like, it says right here, drum brakes require the use of 10-pound residual valves in the line. This residual valve pressure counterbalances the drum brake spring tension, keeping the shoes close to... So basically what it's saying is, as we all know, drum brakes have return springs that pull the shoes back in by compressing the wheel cylinder and sending the fluid back out. Here's the thing, fellers. This is what the world is ignoring with these brakes, master cylinder kits and stuff. This thing has residual valves in it to whatever degree. There's no additional valve outside the master cylinder. People also say that if your master cylinder is under the floorboard, then you need a different kind of residual valve or additional residual valve or residual valve for drum brakes or whatever. But frankly, guys, in these systems, I just don't see gravity putting that much pressure on stuff. So I'm gonna try to filter the noise using the information that I already know to be true, my own experience, and some of the research that I've done. Now, if any of you have watched the channel for any period of time, especially the last 2 months, you know that when I approach a problem that way, I am on a serious losing streak. But you know what they say? Winners never quit, quitters never win. But you know who they don't talk about? The losers who never quit, and they get stomped every time.
The humorous implication being that I am Wile E. Coyote?
We need to upgrade these brakes, and that's just the way it's gotta be. And there's no magical cure. Can't just buy some magical kit that's gonna do it. We're gonna have to actually hot rod this right out by ourselves. Well, that's convenient, right? I just called O'Reilly's and they said, I ordered a 67 Cadillac master cylinder, and they said, is it a Bendix booster or is it a Delco booster? And I said, man, I don't know. Good news here is this bracket fits the thing that it's supposed to fit. All right, so generally speaking, this thing will jam kind of, you know, about where we need it to go. So this is the catch on the 53, 54 Chevys and probably other cars. The pedals actually go through the casting of the master cylinder. So we're gonna have to use our brain smarts and ingenuities here and figure out how to get around it. And I think the way we're gonna get around it is by pilfering and scavenging everything we had left over from the Model T brake rod assembly and see if we can just shoot one straight back toward the light, you know? Woo! See that? Woo! If we can fire some kind of rod linkagefication that'll attach to our booster through that little spot, we might be able to make this work. Gang, we have pilfered. Check this out. Ordered an extra one of these dingle hoppers while we were doing the Model T. 3/8 fine thread. An extra coupling nut that threads onto this booster, because I'm a genius. And I don't have any more threaded rod because I used it all on the Model T, but that's fine. I have multiple bolts, and if we weld some rod between said bolts, we can create a thing longer, which is what we need. So I just pulled the brake pedal to see how far it traveled. I fired brake fluid, nearly missing number one dog. Because I forgot I cut that hose off while I was replacing the rear end. I was PB blastering everything, because if there's ever a fitting that doesn't want to come off, it's a brake fitting, gang. Okay, we made a mess up in this joint. Spread it around, that's what we'll do. It's getting to be easy bake oven 30. So I'm gonna pull it off this bracket and find a way to make that bracket live kinda, you probably can't see, but made that line right yonder, theoretically in line with our push dingly doggler. What's that, bracket trace? Okay. Okay. All right then. You gotta listen to what they're telling you. It's telling me that this entire hole that's cut out of the bracket needs to be clear of the K-member, and we need to be offset at least that much. If we're gonna weld it on, we need more than that so we can get a wrench and a nut on the top and then thread it down. And if we're gonna bolt it on, that is our minimum standoff from our K-member. All right, we're off to a starting point. Not off to the races quite yet, but I just grabbed an extension, shoved it on that bolt that's my placeholder. I think we're in the ballpark. I think I gotta tack it in there before I can stick the master cylinder in though. That's kind of a bummer. Is there an alternative to that? Does anyone know? Gang, it's about as on the money as a guy can eyeball. Does that mean it's right? I don't know. It's good enough to go ahead and tack weld though. Did some general measuring, gonna build a quick little push rod linkage. There's a pretty good chance here that if this prototype works, it will become the bona fide legit version. Crude? Perhaps. Functional? Most likely. Do good weldy stickums. Not too shabby for something that's pretty shabby. I got it pretty straight. All right. It's bright, it's early, and it's hot. We've already been out to the O'Reilly's once this morning to pick up our third master cylinder that they ordered. I said, okay, we're just gonna take it and I'm gonna make it work. We're due at least one more trip because every plumbing project takes at least 3 trips to the hardware store. We know from experience, it's just the price to be paid. Even with all these extra parts and pieces, we'll be going again. The number one goal today though, is to not get frustrated. Anytime you're doing a full brake rebuild, you're gonna have some issues. Flaring lines, bending lines, you're gonna make mistakes, things are gonna suck. But the moment you deviate from stock, you're asking for it.
You asked for it.
You're just asking for it because you're gonna have to put together a bunch of pieces that didn't go together, and that's only step 1. After that, we are going to have to bleed this brake system and make it work. And I guarantee you, this pedal is gonna be hard as a rock or super spongy, and we're gonna fight that for a full day. There are so many new parts in the system and enough old parts in the system, we're gonna be chasing our tails. That's just life. My goal today is to simply not lose my mind. That's it. That's all I'm trying to do. If I happen to get something else done on this car while I don't lose my mind, we'll be okay. Bam. 68 Chevelle drum master cylinder. Next issue-y thing. This is pretty darn deep. For those of you at home yelling at your television screens, no, dude, you're going the wrong way. You're taking apart a car to not get anywhere on another car. I'll be like, man, don't I know it? I don't know what to make of that. It doesn't have one. This is the first time I have disconnected these two things. So I'm trying to start a running log of assumptions that I'm making. First one is that the drum master cylinder I bought is going to have whatever the correct valving is internally to keep residual pressure on a drum system.
And it really does?
It does.
That may not be true, but I'm assuming it to be true. Next thing is that this setup that I'm messing with right here is correct. So if we mimic it, we might be correct. But I don't know if it's correct. But I'm gonna assume that it is.
Well, I just assumed.
The reason for logging your assumptions is, if you just believe it to be true, once you're really tired and hate everything and nothing works, you may not even think to go back and check the things that you assumed to be correct. Assumption. Singing the sirens. She loves singing with the fire trucks. Yeah, buddy, thanks for helping him out. She's so good at that. We're gonna go ahead and bolt up this master cylinder and assume it's correct. 2 hours later, we've been studying real hard for nearly 2 hours. And you know when I got the old books out, I mean business. We got 2 ports here. Which one goes where? Does it matter? Does it matter if it's drum disc? Does it matter if it's drum? You know what? The internet's got a lot of what I'm going to call opinions, because they are indeed not facts. They're just stated like facts. I found enough contradictory information that, well, half the people are wrong, because it's wrong. Somebody's wrong. Front and back, does it matter? Hell yeah, it matters. All dual master cylinders have 2 ports, a primary and a secondary. Is there a rule of thumb? No. It changes over time. I don't know why. And it changes over style. I don't know why. Well, probably because they were in pursuit of something even better. Same as we are. Considering this little fella that we're working with, I know to be a 1968 Chevy dual master cylinder for drum. I know because I just bought it for that application. So we broke out the bleep bloop machine, went on the computer. I downloaded a 67 Chevy manual because I could not find the 68. It says in no uncertain terms, there's a primary and secondary port, that the master cylinder should have residual check valves in it, did from the factory, and that the front port goes to the front brakes and the rear port goes to the rear brakes. But which is the front and which is the rear? In my experience, front and rear does not relate to the part itself, but rather the vehicle when you're looking at a big shop manual. So technically, our master cylinder is mounted backwards in this because the Chevy master cylinder would have been on the firewall, making this the front. 90% of the internet said the one closest to the pedal always goes to the front. Not according to Chevrolet, baby. So I thought, well, what if I had a stock late 60s, 67 specifically, GM car that I could compare that information to? Now granted, it is 50 years old, so somebody could have gotten in there and messed it up. But these brakes work great. So let's dive in here. That looks awfully familiar, and I'll spare you the time. I follow the brake lines. What is to the front of the car goes to the front brakes. This is not a standard for all master cylinders. I am aware of that, but I feel pretty good about this being more of a fact than an assumption. Because I'm gonna forget by the time we go to troubleshooting and we have either a really soft brake pedal or a really hard brake pedal, I've got our box full of assumptions. So far, master cylinder has check valves. That's our first assumption. Second, master cylinder slash that's a booster are good together. We'll go ahead and add 3. Front, rear, MC ports, correct. So the thing about that is it will work if you swap them. However, the primary circuit in the master cylinder should be feeding the front brakes, which have larger diameter wheel cylinders typically, thus putting most of the braking power to the front so your hind end doesn't lock up and come around your front end before your front end stops. But now that it's getting to be the much hotter portion of the day, maybe we can actually get some work done. That'd be good. Also, when you're doing brake lines, you have to choose the monster that will defeat you. It's kind of like the end of Ghostbusters with the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. You got 2 choices. You can get, typically, brake line pre-flared with fittings on it, and then you're gonna have to use 1,000 little unions and connections, each one potentially forming a leak. The other thing you can do, in theory, is get some tubing, some line, make all of your own custom lines, flare all of the ends, hope that you get it right, and hope that your flares don't leak. I feel like making your own lines from the beginning to the end and then finding out that they leak and you have to cut an inch off and then bend everything by hand is definitely more heartbreaking. And so today I'm just feeling these. Also because I don't have any tubing, and they didn't have any, and they couldn't get it till Monday. So we're gonna go with this stuff, which will also probably require at least some cutting and flaring of our own as we move along. All right, I got my mental anguish devices out, which are my brake line bending tools. I know some of you out there, it's like your forte, or there's gotta be at least one person who can just see this thing and know how the bend's gonna end up. I've got to think it out like 182 times. Feels like trying to play checkers in a mirror to me, but we gotta rough everything in so that we can make at least one more run to the parts store and find out what we're missing to try to succeed. We're at least down one fitting so far. Well, first bending failure of the day, we snapped that, so ain't no thing but a chicken whang. We're gonna go ahead and power through with our positive attitude, which means we are gonna be pulling this fitting off and reflaring the end of our 1/4 inch brake run that's gonna come around, bam, to there. It's 1:30 in the afternoon. I've got one line mocked up to the rear. The good news is I think those rear lines are actually in good shape. It's probably good we had our little pep talk with ourselves about not being frustrated today, and we're just gonna tinker along. Dog's keeping me company. Gang, we may have hit a lick here. I bought this morning, but this and this are from our pile of previous mistakes. That's not supposed to be a trophy case to all the times I screwed up, but you know, you can't really go back and return all that crap you bought just because you installed it and you picked the wrong thing. So we have a plethora of trophies of failure. This adapter and this little 3/16 line are gonna take us somewhere to right over here where we'll go ahead and split on our T, and we can just start running our brake lines. I don't think that running 6 inches of 3/16 instead of 6 inches of 1/4 inch to our T is gonna make any difference at all. Famous last words, let's go and add that to the box of assumptions. Number 4. Now, when I went looking for the box of assumptions to add that to the list, I lost the pieces I just found that were gonna work. Positive mental attitude. There you are. There you are. Whoo! Gang, it's 2 in the afternoon. Not too shabby, and I remembered to put the fitting on. How about that? Well, now that we got all pumped about making a good flare, will it fit? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Trip number 3. While I know every plumbing project does take 3 trips to the store, it doesn't only take 3 trips. It takes at least 3 trips. So we'll be on a 4th trip to the store on this project for sure. No brake booster hose, which is kind of a bummer, but that's all right. I should have asked for it any of the last 2 or 3 times I've been up here and forgot. All right, gang, it's like 3 p.m. We gotta get after it. All right, gang, we have brake lines run with 7 new connection points, and that number goes way higher if you count all the sides of a connection like that. I'm counting that as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think 3 of those are flares that I did, so those become even more suspect. None of this is even tight yet though. We gotta bleed the master cylinder first. And we're headed back to the O'Reilly's because this is decidedly not a master cylinder bleeding kit. Not trying to razz on the old 16-year-old parts store kid, but I will tell you what, there is a substantial difference between going to the commercial desk and dealing with people who at least have the experience to, you know, deal with commercial clients, and a kid who has no idea what bleeding brakes means, let alone bleeding a master cylinder. Not saying there needs to be a prerequisite to work at the parts store, but there's a learning curve, man. There's a learning curve. Made this trip so many times today, I wonder if I can do it blindfolded. Man, if I had been more optimistic about how this was gonna go, I would be just about to tears at this point. And we haven't even started bleeding. It's gonna get so much worse. Not only like physically bleeding, but bleeding the brakes. It's gonna leak from every damn where. Come on, come on. And I can't see anything. I'm gonna need a lot of rags for this. I am gonna make a mess. However, The world's most wonderful dog has reclaimed this as Dog Island, which is my mess catching sort of solution. Gang, it's a good thing she moved. Oh man, oh, this is gonna be a disaster. Here we go. Oh man, it's gonna be hard to find the leak when I've spilled it everywhere. Wow, I have made a huge mess. It's just begun and we're already folding our cardboard. Fortunately, because it's through the floor and we're under here, I can reach the pedal and kind of keep an eye on stuff. Kinda. So my experience overall with brakes and master cylinders and everything is either they work or they don't. When they don't, it's a nightmare goose chase. The port going to the rear brakes has no juicification going on. So I'm gonna pull it off. We'll check the bench bleeding on the bench actually. What I think is happening is the push rod from the booster is not traveling far enough. Let's, is it like 3/8 or so? That is way more deeper than 3/8. What that's saying to me is a couple things. There's an adapter, I'll try to show you, or remember I saw it on the Speedway website, that's supposed to come with certain master cylinders for power brakes. 2, that says on this one, this is primary because it is squirting a little bit and this is squirting none, which means this is engaging first, which means that's the right one for the front brakes, which means we got it right. I guess if you're bench bleeding, you can figure that out on the bench. You could technically do before you ran your lines and stuff. Just saying, just saying. Brakes, man, they're really important, but they can be strangely tricky. I gotta make a thing. All right, gang, what I have here is some 1/2-inch threaded rod. Let's see if we can make an adapter for this. Now, gang, we're gonna talk about the luck I just had here. If I had decided to bench bleed this on the bench, well, I would never have known, you see, because I would have bench bled it and I would have said, okay, the master cylinder is working fine, right? Then I would have put it in the car, put hard lines that I cannot see through in the car, gone to bleed the rear brakes and been like, what the hell? What is going on? And my brain might have forgotten the integral steps between the rod from the brake pedal to the booster and then how far the booster goes and this whole contraption. And I might have gone straight for rear wheel cylinders or rear brake hose, or you know what I'm saying? And I would have had to work my way all the way back until I figured this out. So I guess I got lucky. Just, you know, this is the benefit of watching somebody else go through it, gang. Yeah, that's pretty good, right? So now we got a couple things going on. We are pushing fluid through both ports, and we can find out how far the master cylinder travels, how far this rod goes. We'll make a mark. Don't really know how I'm gonna make the second mark, but I will figure it out. All right, that's roughly 1.25 inches. I don't know which one of those 3 marks, but roughly, you know what I'm saying? So let's see how far this goes. Which is the same amount as our master cylinder. Can you hear my enthusiasm? Because it is indeed real. So now to get full travel, basically I need to make my little insert flush with the surface of the medulla thing. All right, my favorite method for marking round stuff. What we need. Looks like it's going to end up being right at 1.5 inches. Not bad. All right, I'm going to try to not spill all of this right now. And then I guess the most important thing beyond that is making sure that once this is cinched up, we're not actually compressing the piston in the master cylinder or pushing it in while we bolt it up, because there's like gotta be a sweet spot where there's zero pressure on it but not a whole lot of slop, meaning like none. Just found a tech video from Speedway. So this thing is indeed adjustable, and it needs to be adjustable, and more importantly, it told me that there is a preload, like basically a 1/16 of an inch gap is where you want to be. And that's a number I can work with. So we gotta figure out how to get to that. All right, so we're gonna go from the mounting surface in and then the mounting surface out. Whatever that says. 312 thousandths, not good. Plus that means our rubber doohickey was for sure in the way as well. Mr. Speedway Man said that they often are set out too far from the factory for the little adapter that they send with their master cylinders. All right, let me try to get some miniature wrenches. Goes a pretty long way, gang. Question is, how much did we get? Should have written down those numbers. I cut through all the instructions that came with this booster. Let's review those. Let's see if I'm an idiot. Well, gang, according to the man on the internet TV program, we have it adjusted correctly, which is, I'm glad I looked. Oh, I was gonna see if I was a super idiot. Answers, yeah, we already know that, but like specifically here. It's not just me, these instructions are bogus. It basically is telling you to have somebody in and have them estimate if the pedal moves a 1/2 inch, if fluid moves, and then what to do to adjust it. And it also says, if the push rod is non-adjustable, use shims, which is a great idea, so that if we find that we have a little bit of an issue, that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're not gonna dive back in there. We have no more adjustment in the push rod, so we'll shim out from the master cylinder. But again, it was the Speedway tech guy that said a 1/16 of an inch, and that's something that there are a lot of ways to measure. We picked one, we did that. Ladies and gentlemen, it feels like we have done a ton, but we have done virtually nothing. At this point, we are Sisyphus sizing up the boulder. It's big. Inevitably, after we've bled the brakes like 3 times while running the master cylinder out of fluid and having to start over or finding new leaks or whatnot, we're gonna actually have to try the brake pedal. And we are gonna find that it is either hard as a rock or soft as a sponge. And neither one will do. Then we'll have to puzzle. We'll scratch our minds for a bit. And then we'll take everything apart looking for the problem. And once we have maybe found something that we might think it is, we'll put everything back together and start over checking for leaks, bleeding the brakes. The boulder just keeps going back up the hill and rolling back down.